Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning. How are you, my badass?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. And so, it's been a full week today, and I'm looking forward to the weekend. We're actually going to head up to the cabin this weekend and get away, and my husband's looking forward to just doing some fishing, and I'm looking forward just to fucking relaxing.
Yeah.
What about you?
Week.
What's going on with you?
We got a snowstorm happening. So
that sounds so weird down in Atlanta. Sorry.
I know. And we already had the first day of spring, so earlier this week. So it is a little strange, although it's not unusual. I can remember when I was a kid having snowstorm in May once. So, so we're going to just probably chill in the house. And then we've got some other plans, I think, throughout the weekend. We might do Fantastic Lady Day.
What's that?
Okay. So the show, The League, it's a really great show about fantasy football. Oh. And I'm not even that into football, but I became into fantasy football for like 10 years because of the show, The League. But anyway, they have a Fantastic Lady Day thing, and we adopted it. And so our whole family does it. So we send Jenna off, and she goes somewhere, and then we do stuff in the house. Typically, I can't say too much because it's often a surprise, but we typically clean stuff or do projects, but then we do something fun for when she gets home. So the kids might create a hotel, and they'll greet her and pretend to be something else, and it ends up just being a really fun time. The kids get into it, and we ended up having a blast. So
I'm loving this.
Yeah.
So, fantastic. What did you call it?
It's called Fantastic Lady Day.
Lady Day.
So she goes to the spa or gets a massage, and then she comes home and there's a surprise. There's surprises, and all of her kids are are involved in it in some way. So we were planning to do that on Sunday, but we'll see if they want to with the storm.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I really like that.
Yeah.
Well, we have some people joining us today, and I know we're going to have a full house because I got to tell you, our guest today ended up doing a little bit of a video just to sort of talk about how excited he was about being on the show. And lots of people were like, oh my gosh, I have to check this out. And so he has a little bit of a fan following, he's almost, got a lot of groupies. So I see that we have Megan that has joined us. She said, good morning. So excited for today's episode. Was there something you were going to say, Kate?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, those of you that don't know Matt or haven't, watched any of his videos, you will see why he has groupies. I am totally now a fan of Matt's, and I think you'll all see why. He's genuine, he's amazing, he's vulnerable, and he's got some really great shit to say. So super looking forward to it.
Yes. All right. We have Myra coming in from Facebook. Good morning, ladies. Happy Friday.
Morning.
And we got all three mediums taken care of. Carmen's now coming in from YouTube. She said, good morning, my favorite beautiful badasses.
Yeah, I suggested that for her because she just has so much trouble with getting the Facebook to recognize her. So
well, and so one other thing just to note is we will see what will happen with our Facebook fans. So, for example, my understanding is that all third-party applications now won't be able to stream or be connected to Facebook. So it is something we're evaluating. I actually said something on a Streamline post, and they said, well, we're working on it. And so I don't know what that means. Are they going to fix the problem or not? So we most likely in April will probably be starting an Instagram account and maybe streaming there for the Facebook individuals. But otherwise, go ahead and go to YouTube or get on LinkedIn for now. And so my mom is joining us. She said, morning, all. Good morning, Mom. And then Bruce is joining us. He said, morning, badasses. So another fellow badass. He joined us last week on our 1-year anniversary show. And it was so fun talking with him.
It really was. I really enjoyed our anniversary show and the guests that came on and the videos we had. It's like I want to spend more time with each and every one of those people.
I know. I was like, man, we should do this every episode.
Yeah.
It was just like a overall party. I actually just this morning moved to the balloons. I was like, I won't have it on. But this entire week, I've had them up. So every time I've gotten on with our clients and internally, everybody was like, what's the balloons for? And so I just left them up for the longest time. And so I finally moved them this morning.
Mine, fell during the end of the show because they were very precariously placed by me last minute. And then, of course, the littles, our 3 littles came in the office later and they were like, balloons? And they just grabbed all of them. Like they're, I don't know what it is with kids and balloons. It's like, like they are just these magical things. They're so cheap. I often just buy a bag of balloons and like literally throw them in the living room. Like, have fun, guys.
I know when we did my aunt's 100th birthday, all the kids were like, can I get the balloons? Can I get the balloons? I'm like, sure. Yeah. But, it's like the pure joy of things that as adults that we just don't see anymore. I'm like, oh, that's so sad that I don't see the, like I really enjoyed the balloons last week and just having them. So,
yeah.
Kim, happy Friday. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
Yeah. And then we have Eric joining us as well. Good badass morning. And now you know exactly how he says it.
It's so great.
Oh, and Stephanie's joining us. Good morning, Stephanie. And then we have a Facebook user. Good morning. I'm not sure who this might be, but we are welcoming you. So be sure to go to streamyard.com/Facebook if you want your name to be seen. And then we have a new person. Yay, Graham. Maybe Matt knows Graham. So he's coming from Vancouver Island. So
Canada.
Welcome for the very first time, Graham, and hope you continue to come back. If you are someone new, we would love to just have you tell us that you're a new individual with everyone. Just give us a heart. We normally do a white heart, but I know there's sometimes not a white heart on some of the mediums. So just any type of, maybe a purple heart. I know Bruce loves purple, so a purple or a white heart. Oh, and then Teresa's joining us.
I saw that. I've been waiting for you to pull it up.
It's so good to see Teresa's face. And so
I know. I love you, Teresa.
I know.
And I love Canadians in general. In general, Canadians and people from Oregon and Washington are just nice. I have not met one I don't like.
I know. And so, Graham, you might notice that the northern accent comes out occasionally from Cate with her Wisconsin accent. So
I gotta hide it because it's just a bit much for everyone else. But that's golly.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. And then we have Lori joining us as well. And so it was so good to see her live as well last week.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we can see her name, she said. Perfect.
Teresa gave me an ope.
Ope.
Yep. Oh. We say it all the time. All the time. It literally is. And the other thing we say all the time is, no. No.
Well, with that, I would like to go ahead and bring Matt up to the stage. So let's do that right now. And so, Matt, let's get things set up. Good morning. Good badass morning, as we say. How are you this morning?
Good badass morning to you. I'm doing all right. Glad to be here. Excited about it.
I am too. And so we were having some pre-conversations even before we started everything. And so, today we might laugh, we might cry. I think we're sort of used to that on our show. And so I'm just super excited about today's conversation with you. And I want to take a little bit of a moment to sort of start the conversation in how it is that I was introduced to Matt. So when I'm on LinkedIn and I'm connected to a lot of other individuals, and I noticed that they were liking this particular person's post, and I went to go check it out, and I was like, wow, this person is super raw, super vulnerable in their post. And I was like, I have to get to know this person. And I just really loved the content that you had. And I won't get into it quite yet, but I just loved the things that you were saying. And so Matt and I got together and started chatting so I could get to know him a little bit more. And I just told him, I said, you have something to say that people need to hear, that is a much needed voice. I think not only he's in the construction industry, and we'll have you tell us a little bit, but not only in the construction industry, but I think that people need to understand that this is beyond just that type of industry. This is a voice that's needed, related to masculinity, related to what that term actually means, to understanding a little bit more about maybe the path that sometimes people have gone down, and realizing some of the ways that maybe they were thinking, and then they've gone back and sort of rethought how they were raised. And so with that, Matt, I want to first just do a little bit of an introduction to maybe who Matt is today. So, where it is, however you would want people to know you, just to be able to do a little bit of an introduction to Matt in the present, in the now, as you would say.
I'm a human. I'm a human just trying to navigate this thing that we call life. I think I used to answer that question. I think a lot of people answer that question by talking about what they do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a part of it, because that's a part of kind of who we are to some degree. But I purposefully don't start there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because for myself, at least, I realized that that's how I had defined myself for most of my life, was with my career. And though I love what I do, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to define myself by what I do to make money. So with that being said, I am in the construction industry. I'm a general superintendent for Ajax Paving out of Tampa. I work out of the Tampa office down here. I'm a father. I am, man, I'm just, again, I go back to the human thing. It seems like I have so many of these conversations anymore, not just like on a podcast or something, and primarily not on podcasts, but with just people every day, that a lot of people are struggling with something. Maybe it's fair to say that most of us have something we're struggling with. And I would say a part of who I am. Well, here you go. Here, maybe this is a good way to do it. So I created a mission statement for myself. Probably close to a year ago now, somewhere in there. And that mission statement, as hoodoo voodoo as it may sound to some people, is, as an eternal being of love and light, I will embody that love and light towards myself and others.
Oh, I love that.
So that's who I try to, and I emphasize the towards myself, because I've come to realize that I have, and it's getting better, but I had pretty low self-worth. Didn't really know how to love myself, that kind of stuff. So I emphasize that, and and I will embody that love and light towards myself and others. So
do you say it as an affirmation to yourself?
Yeah.
Like, so you say it like regularly, like in the morning, or okay. I love that.
Yeah, I don't say it every morning.
Yeah.
my practice varies, I would say. There's always some meditation involved. There's typically some kind of affirmations like that. But yeah, I say it pretty regularly.
Good. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we know who the present Matt is, well, maybe let's go back. Oh, elementary, high school. What was your family life like? I tend to find that people find it helpful to sort of see where people were. And as we start to talk, the reason I wanted you to say who you are now, and as we start to evolve, is that a lot of times who we are now, a lot of people still see us as that previous individual. So who Matt is today isn't who Matt was a year ago. Who Matt is today isn't who Matt was 20 years ago or even 30 years ago. And so, but it is a reflection of understanding sort of the path that people and how they evolve. And I think as we start to get into this topic, I think that will become important to understand that when we say evolution, who Matt is today also won't be who Matt is in a year. And so that we continue to not look at each individual as they were in the past, but who they are in the now. And so who was Matt in the past as you were growing up as a young kid? If I was in high school, if I was in elementary, what would I see?
I would say like I was a pretty likable kid. I felt like I had friends. I got in trouble for talking too much, which is not, which I'm sure nobody will take as a surprise. That part probably hasn't evolved.
Right.
But I was also, and these are things that I think in retrospect now I know. I was always, I'm 5'6". I was always small. Like my freshman year of high school, I was 4'8". So I was always the smallest kid in my class, which brought some insecurities with it, right? So, and I think eventually what that led to, high school years, later into high school, I started getting into some trouble. And substance abuse, crime. And I think some of that came from like, I had to be the guy. I had to take it to the other level. I had to show out. Because I think I felt to some degree like I was insignificant or small because my physical, because I was vertically challenged.
Yeah.
I had to show up and show out in other ways, and so ended up getting myself in a fair amount of trouble. And from 16 to 19, I actually spent approximately 2.5 years incarcerated. Yeah, I would say that was young me. My family, my father passed, I want to say 8 years ago now. I'm horrible with time. I think it was around 8 years ago. And now my father got sober when I was 12, but before that he had substance abuse issues. My mother's still living. Matter of fact, I'm heading up this weekend to see them. I got some stuff I'm getting done today, and then I'm heading up to the St. Louis area where I'm originally from.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm originally from the St. Louis area. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, Alton, Illinois is actually. I tell everybody St. Louis because nobody knows Alton. Most people don't.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I
down
was
in
born
Farmington, Missouri. So
okay, yeah,
I know Alton.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
That's funny.
So that's, I mean that, but I have some fond memories too. Like I don't want to just highlight. Like my mom and dad danced around the living room to, old Donna Summers vinyls. And like
Bad Girls.
yeah. It was MacArthur Park. Someone left the cake out in the rain, right?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
But like that, and then my dad was into metal. So he had like some old Black Sabbath vinyls and all that kind of stuff. But like I grew up, music was a part of our family, we all appreciated music. So I mean, there was good stuff, there too. And I genuinely, like, as I look back, as I've grown myself and became more self-aware, and through talk therapy and some of the stuff I read, and kind of really understanding, some of the core things that shaped me, as a child, I still, I believe, and this is a bit controversial, I think, but I believe Brene Brown, if you're familiar with her at all, Brene Brown says that everyone is doing the very best they can. And I believe that.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that don't, and they don't like that. But I think if you take everything into consideration, if you take a person's mental state, the resources they have, the knowledge they have, all that kind of stuff, they're doing the very best they can, man.
Yep.
And so I look back, if I talk about things like in my childhood that were difficult or whatever, I don't ever mean that in a denigrating way, demeaning way towards my parents. I think they were doing the very best they could.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think that that's important to also keep in mind, that that was a point in time for them, that they were doing the best that they could in that moment of time. So it's, and that's, go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say, I've had to do that with myself and parenting mistakes I've made. I know, I've shared about our eldest Oscar and the path he took, and he was on the show once. He was also incarcerated and in a residential facility for almost the same time you were. And it was super hard. But as I look back, and I would ask that all parents do this, because when you look back and you think about a mistake you may have made, or something that could have gone better, right, in your parenting or in your relationship, but you never intended for it to go that way. Like, you were, you wanted to protect, or you wanted to do what was best, right? Always, for your kids, for your partner, for yourself. You were always trying to do what you thought was the best. You just did the best you could with the skills you had at the time, right? And then as you grow, you get more and more skills, hopefully.
Yeah. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is that you also have to take ownership of those types of things as well. And so the accountability, and I know, Matt, that's one of the things that I think you continue to reflect upon, is taking accountability for maybe things that, you were incarcerated. I don't hear you making mistakes on, like, it's not that you didn't necessarily do maybe some of the stuff, or I don't know, maybe you did, but, and so, it's also taking accountability for things, but it's also then, as people, that when people make mistakes, we need to give grace and forgiveness of allowing people to evolve as a person as well.
Yeah. For
sure. Yeah, agreed. I also use the term ownership, taking ownership of, man, I got it. We could do a whole full episode on all the things I could own in my life, and I agreed. And I think it's important that you make that statement, because it's a both and, right? I mean, people are doing the very best they can. I believe that, all things considered. But it doesn't mean you're not culpable for the mistakes you make.
Right.
You still got to take ownership for what you did, and for maybe not knowing better at a certain time. To some degree, you were doing. I don't know. I'm thinking, in my own life, there are a lot of things that I wish I would have done differently. I can't stay there. I don't stay there dwelling on that, because that's no good. But there's a lot of things that I can look back and go, oh, no, that wasn't a good call.
Right. Yeah. I think about, you have, you're making your own mistakes, and then you're in relationship with all these people that are also making their own mistakes, and then those mistakes collide, and it's such a beautiful fucking mess, right? Like, life.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the word "and," because we can be making a mistake and also at some point accepting accountability for both of those things. So it's okay to own the mistake and then also make sure that we are giving ourselves grace for the mistake.
Yeah. Agreed.
So let's dive in a little bit more as I was introduced to you, being in the construction industry and also some of the things that you talked about as you were growing up. Maybe talk a little bit about the outlook that you initially had. And so the title of this is The Evolution of Masculinity. And so understanding a little bit more about that mindset that you have, and maybe where did you have the aha moment that maybe you were headed down the wrong path? The thing that made you say, oh, I should reevaluate myself or reflect or do some self-reflection.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say for the majority of my life, and I've been in the construction industry for 27 years. I started at 19. I mean, I took a couple breaks here and there and did some other stuff, but for the most part, 27 years in the construction industry, which I think is at least, and I guess I'm a little biased, like, because I'm a part of it, but you want to talk about like what I would consider pseudo masculinity or traits that, I know the term is used frequently, toxic masculinity, things that, like, dude, the construction industry is the poster child for that. Like in some ways, and I'm not trying to just dog out the construction industry. It's not true. I'm broad brushing, of course, but I feel like a lot of, like, I tell people the construction industry kind of raised me too, because I was 19, fresh out of being incarcerated, and went right into construction. And like, I was around, construction's tough, and it's hard work, and it takes toughness, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not suggesting that that everybody's that people need to be weak necessarily, that's, or meek even, there's some tough aspects of the construction industry, but I think, how do I put this? I think there's just a misunderstanding of what it means to. I think the way our culture works. I'm trying to figure out how I want to approach this. So some of my aha moments. How about that? Because I think that'll help. Is I read a book called "For the Love of Men" by Liz Plank. I was seeing a therapist who had me read a couple feminist books. She said, you need to read this book. And that was one of them, For the Love of Men by Liz Plank. And then another book was Man Enough, Undefining My Masculinity by Justin Baldoni. And those books were pretty eye-opening to me, because they talked, especially like Justin Baldoni's book, he talked a lot about how boys are raised, specifically how boys are raised. And it just all resonated. Like the stuff he's saying, I'm like, yeah, that's how we're all raised. And the dangers in that, I guess some of the issues that come out of that, and we were talking just a little bit before the show, the stuffing down of feelings. I heard all the time, suck it up, don't cry, don't be a sissy, don't be a girl, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And again, I don't want to, I think for me, at least, I have a tendency the pendulum will swing all the way one way or the other with me. Like, I'm 110% if I'm going to, so like I could read these books and just, oh man, feminism, I'll call myself a feminist now. And I mean, and I don't mean anything wrong by that, but I think there is a balance. There's a balance to be had. And I think for the most part, and that's probably changing somewhat in our culture now. But I know, especially, you know, I'll be 47 this year. I was born in '77. Like when I was coming up, I mean, I remember wanting a little pony one time. I don't know why I wanted a little pony. I was a kid,
Right.
and I wanted a little pony, and it was like, hell no, you're not getting a little pony because you're a boy, you know. Now somebody may hear this and be like, yeah, my boy's not getting a little pony too. Why? What's wrong with him having a little pony, bro? Like, yeah, where does that hurt you or them? I don't know. It's again, I think there are traits associated with what we consider masculinity, by and large, that are unhealthy, unhelpful. Men stuff their feelings down because they were often raised to stuff their feelings down because they couldn't be a sissy, or they don't talk about the things that make them hurt. You know, they don't talk about their depression. And again, I'm broad brushing, but I think it's an issue. And I think it's something that we got to talk about because that's how you get it out in the open. And yeah, I don't even know what the question was at this point in time or whether or not I answered it.
You did. So you mentioned with your dad that you wanted this little pony and he said no. What do you think the fear was? Because I tend to find that people have, like, what is the fear in getting you that pony? What was he afraid might happen?
I think, and I can only guess, but you know, I raised my boys similarly until recently, as I've had these awakenings myself, so to speak. There's a place that you do have to be tough, and that's historically associated with masculinity and men, and you got to be tough. So anything that would make you softer, like a My Little Pony and brushing My Little Pony's hair, that might make you soft, and the world might eat you up, or you might not be. You won't be a man in the sense of whatever that is. I think that's the fear.
Yeah.
You know,
I do think there are men out there that correlate it to sexuality too, that are worried that if their little boys are interested in girl things, that they're gonna, you know, end up gay. And you know, there's a little bit of truth to that with stereotypes, right? I mean, I know a lot of gay people, and there is some truth to this shit. But like, you know, but that doesn't. It's not a natural thing. I know, you know. I had a daycare provider once tell me, I was picking up my 3 boys when they were little. The older 3 are all boys, and I walk in and 2 of them were like in dress up, but they were in like the princess stuff, you know, and they were playing. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad it's you." She's like, "All the boys are really like, we got a couple of donations and we got these princess things, and all the kids, including the boys, are in love with this stuff." She's like, "But I have to make sure they have it off before the parents come in because most of them get really worked up about it." And she's like, "And I knew you wouldn't care." But, you know, and I thought about it. I was like, and I've said that to people, like, you know, that when you're not around and your boy is comfortable, he's probably playing with this stuff anyway, you know, because we're all humans.
And why wouldn't they? I mean, we all like soft and sparkly things? I mean, wouldn't it be natural as a kid to be, "Oh, that's shiny," or, you know, "Oh, that's soft." Right. Like, why wouldn't they like those types of things?
Yeah. You know, Liz Plank has a whole section in her book where she talks about toys specifically. And when they essentially started making them gender specific. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's, you know, the My Little Pony. I mean, that's just an example, you know, obviously of just, yeah, man, I think, I think it's hurting men. I think, and that's one of the biggest takeaways I got as I read these books was, yes, toxic masculinity or pseudo masculinity, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
hurts women 100%, and perhaps chiefly, you may want to say, but it is killing men too. And I think literally, because I really feel like, and this is something I came away from, and this is something, now this is true for me in my life, so I can't say it's true for everybody, but I'm pretty convinced that most men harbor a significant amount of shame and operate from a place of shame, having attempted to measure up to this unattainable standard that is masculinity. Don't cry, don't be sad. You got to be tall, dark, and handsome. You got to have big junk. You got to be with a lot of women. I mean, these are the things from when we were boys that we are raised to believe is what it means to be a man. Right. And they are in many ways unattainable standards. And so you walk around having never been able to accomplish what it is. So you feel like less of a man, and you are riddled with shame. Maybe I shouldn't say you, because me, that was me. Yeah. Sometimes still is me. So.
Well, and I think you made me also reflect upon even the term toxic masculinity, because that was the term that a lot of times people use. And we had just done an episode a couple weeks ago about labeling. And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, that's labeling. And I'm like, toxic masculinity, just that term, because when you think about the label itself, the reason that it doesn't work is men don't want to be toxic. And so they immediately reject it and say, that's not me. So as I started to like dive in further, the reason the word and the label toxic masculinity isn't even affecting or a lot of times impacting men is because they don't see it as themselves. What you started talking about is the pseudo masculinity or just redefining even masculinity is really what it's about. It's not about connecting yourself to the word toxic masculinity. It's about evaluating, are the things that you're doing as a man helping yourself in becoming a better person and becoming more comfortable, not only with your masculine self, but also your feminine self. It is the balance of the two that is what is important. So to me, I really appreciated the fact of you almost calling me out on, as we started looking at the label of toxic masculinity, I was like, oh, he's right. We shouldn't actually use that because it's just labeling people in a box. And it's so much more complex than that. It is looking at yourself and saying, am I balancing the two? And that's really the evolution of masculinity, is being comfortable with that feminine side.
Indeed. Agreed. And I don't remember honestly where I picked up the term. I didn't originate it. It could have been my therapist at one point in time said it, but pseudo masculinity. Yeah. And I like that because it feels like toxic masculinity is extremely polarizing.
It is.
So I like that term because I think it's accurate. It is false masculinity. It's this, it's this idea. And on your point there, if you don't mind, when you said, balancing the two, this book I read a while back, just a quick quote, it's called The Way of the Superior Man. And it's not a chauvinist manifesto. It's a really yeah, even though the title sounds like it. But I loved this, and he says it's time to evolve beyond the macho jerk ideal, all spine and no heart. It is also time to evolve beyond the sensitive and caring wimp ideal, all heart and no spine. Like that's that balance in my mind that you're talking about, and what I'm attempting to attain myself, is where is that balance? For me individually, where am I most comfortable at? Where do I operate the best? I mean, I can be your hard ass construction worker, believe me,
Mhm.
I've been in the industry long enough and survived in this industry long enough that, you know, I can be that dude.
Yeah. And I'm
You
going to pull
know,
up Ed's comment. He said, construction's tough and it's hard work and it takes toughness. And so
agreed.
we have to admit that there are areas that we have to be tough. And we were talking about this even before the show, in that scale of the feminine to the masculine to the middle part. So there's tolerant, which is the feminine side. There's the aggressive, which is the masculine side. And then there's assertive, which is in the middle. Now, in situations, I might need to be aggressive. If someone is, potentially coming at me and my family with a gun or a knife, I may not be assertive, or I may not be tolerant. I might end up being aggressive. So there's sometimes reasons to go to those extremes, but it's understanding that balance of the in between of being the assertive. And women have this challenge as well. Sometimes we're just so tolerant that we're walked over. And what's funny is that as I've continued to talk with more and more people, I don't find that it's actually a male or female thing. I've seen men that allow people, that they're very tolerant and they allow people to walk over them. So for us, it's more about the energy that you have within you and balancing the two.
Makes
And
perfect sense.
what is some of the things that you do to be able to help you with being able to balance the two?
I'd say I'm learning all the time. Like I read, I'm reading books about this kind of stuff. Helps me, helps give me a new perspective. Um, for me, I've got I've got a mindfulness and meditation practice that I do each morning.
Yeah.
That really helps me kind of get grounded, and and I don't know. I don't know how to answer that other than I'm just as new information comes to me,
Yeah.
I'm seeing where it fits. I'm seeing where it integrates.
You're sharing this information.
Right.
You're not doing this in a vacuum. You're doing this kind of publicly, like with the things you're writing and the posts you make, and so it's more than that. It's you're taking in this knowledge and changing yourself, but you're creating an avenue for others to do so because you're exposing what you're doing.
Well, there's a bit of a feedback loop there too, right?
Right.
Because then as people like comment or agree or disagree or point me in a direction of a book that they think I might like or something, it helps. And I think one of the things you said at the beginning, Sarah, was it's not like we're getting together here, and I'm sure you two don't get together and just claim you have all the answers, and I'm certainly not doing that either. All I'm doing is sharing some of the things that I've recognized that have been true for me, and I don't think they're unique to me, and so and that seems to hold true as it resonates with other people and they reach out to me and I have conversations via DM or in comment sections or whatever else. And it's like, look, here's what I kind of figured out and here's what's been helping me navigate it. Maybe it would work for you too.
And I know mindfulness is something that you have found to be important. How to maybe talk a little bit about what does that practice look like when you do it?
So, like, I have a morning routine where I meditate every morning. I just sit in the quiet and the stillness. I don't get on my phone as soon as I wake up. Now, I say I don't. I'm not perfect. There are times where I don't follow this routine. But for the most part, when I wake up in the morning, I will check because we operate 24 hours a day. We have a lot of nighttime paving and stuff. So I will check my work phone, make sure I haven't missed anything there.
Right.
But then work phone, personal phone goes on silent. And for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I have a cup of coffee. I'll drink about half that cup of coffee and then I meditate. I got some breathing techniques I do, and I just try to quiet my mind and be still. And And what it has done for me and how it has helped is understanding that this thing doesn't have to control me.
Mm.
Like, I think the majority of humans, are, the mind is a tool, an extremely powerful tool to be used by us, but I think most people are being used by it.
They're letting their thoughts just control them.
Yeah, and they identify with like this story. Like Brene Brown says this, and Eckhart Tolle, and all sorts of people. Which those two are, I don't know if they've ever even met or talked. There's some wide spectrum there. But what's the story you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
Every day.
Right.
We're telling ourselves this story every day of who we are and what's going on and what other people think about us, and what details do we really have and what details are we making up. You know, and how that affects our just everyday. So what meditation and mindfulness practices have helped me with is to catch that now. Not all the time. Believe me, this hamster wheel takes off on me and has me fucked up sometimes. You know? But now sometimes it doesn't, because I catch it. And I go, whoa, nah, we're not going there. No, we're not going there. You know?
Yeah, we've talked about that. I was talking with Sarah about that earlier this week, actually. You know, like, and that. I mean, that has to do with mental health and all sorts of things too. You know, but I think you have an excellent point that I really want to draw attention to, which is, you know, you're not going to be perfect at it, but you can get good at clearing your mind, which can be used not just in the morning to like regulate yourself and set yourself up for a good day. It's really good for that, right? But you know, that practice can be used as a tool throughout the day, so that when things get overwhelming or when that hamster wheel just starts spinning like crazy, you have a tool or a skill in your tool belt that you can pull out and say, okay, just chill the fuck out for a second, you know, just let's figure this out. And, you know, I mean, there's so many professionals out there that tell us about how much negativity we really have inside of our head, right? Because of all the shit we've already talked about, the shame that we all carry, or the roles that we never feel like we're measuring up to. Those thoughts, those negative narratives are powerful, and they're consuming, right? So you have to like battle them constantly, which is exhausting. But when it works, it's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah. And learning, I would, and I understand and would agree with you that it's exhausting battling those things, but, and then also learning not to battle them. And just to let them be and to accept them. Radical acceptance, right? Where it's just like, okay, I feel really sad right now, and that's okay. I sound like Stuart Smalley. Remember him?
Yeah, I love it.
I'm smart enough. And doggone it, people like me. Yeah. You know, and I don't mean to come across like that dude, but but really to open up space to allow yourself to feel the way you, instead of, because we're constantly battling. We're fighting whatever this is.
Right.
Sometimes, yes, you have to battle through this stuff, and then sometimes you could just not.
Yeah.
And just let it be, and it's okay.
Just
it's all right.
Yes.
And that's a part of that mindfulness practice. And, you know, you're working out those muscles when you do meditation and stuff, and learning how to be in control of your mind rather than it be in control of you. So, and again, there's just, you can just go, okay, it's okay to feel however I'm feeling right now. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to accept that.
I had a great,
and that's pretty powerful. That's pretty, yeah.
had a great therapist once tell me that, radical acceptance is really about riding the wave, that you're gonna feel it and it's not gonna feel good, but you can observe it and then you can, change it if you need to, but you ride the wave and take it into wherever you need to go. You mentioned therapy. And books. To me, it sounds like you maybe are familiar with DBT type, or maybe you've just learned a lot of these different concepts. But are there any other, like I don't hear a lot of men talking about going to therapists, especially female therapists, right? So I would love to talk, to hear a little bit more about that or what it brought to you, if you're willing.
Yeah. I think so. Therapy. Whew. All right. Let's go here. It was a few years ago now, maybe 2.5, 3 years. I don't know. Again, time doesn't work here. I started seeing a therapist, was having some relationship issues, and started seeing a therapist to try to work through some of that stuff. And eventually that led to my partner also going and seeing a therapist, which I kind of figured at that point. I was like, because we had some marital issues. So trying to figure out where and how I want to go with this.
It's a sensitive topic. And, the biggest thing to keep in mind is you go where you're comfortable in sharing. So,
yeah. Therapy gave me a place to be raw and real. And like when I kind of laid in, like grabbed a hold of this idea, wait a minute, you can't share what I say in here with anybody. Like that's part of like what you do, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, you're fucked. This is about to get real sideways. And how freeing that is, right? Then to just be able to just vomit out everything you've been thinking and feeling and whatever else. And then I ended up doing like a little bit of EMDR as well, which was pretty cool. Matter of fact, I'm thinking of going back to that therapist because I've switched therapy. I'm thinking about going back to her because I'd like to do some more of that. But that's kind of how it started in my adult life, going back to therapy or going, because like, when you're locked up and you're younger, like 16 to 19, they make you see psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. So I had some experience there, but then that's kind of where that started. And man, from there it was like kind of a snowball effect, because then I started figuring out how jacked up I was. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, you know what I mean? But I mean, it was like, wow, I started learning about emotional neglect as a child and what that tends to do to you, for you, however you want to say it.
Right.
Which, and again, they were doing the very best they could, right? Not beating them up for it. And in the time period I came up in, who was talking about emotional health for children? And that kind of, it just really wasn't happening. Like within about 3 or 4 visits with her, this was a good one. She said, "You're classic ADD." And I was like, what? I was like, how am I at the time like 44, 45 years old and I don't know this? She said, honey, she was the same age as me. She said, honey, they weren't diagnosing that stuff when we were kids. Right. Unless you were bouncing off the wall and it was ADHD, They weren't diagnosing that stuff. And then she walked through all these things that I had told her about how I acted and the way I operated. And she goes, that's classic. I'm like, cool. What do I do about that?
As a 44, 35-year-old.
Yeah. And she's like, well, you could get on medication if you wanted to. She said, but you figured out how to operate with it. So you probably don't need to. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, appreciate that information. But I mean, it really just, therapy for me helped me get to know myself. You know?
It gave you that safe place, right? It's not when you were describing, like, you know, not being able to say whatever you want, and, you know, but the key is that you were safe to do so. You weren't being judged. You were with someone who was objective. You know, and I've often felt bad, but I feel like my therapist, my current therapist now, I have been in therapy since I was 11. You know, and so you can do a lot of therapy and not get deep. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, Matt, is that you did therapy and you did it in the right way. Not that there's a right or wrong, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But still, I do think the right way to do therapy is to fucking go all in, right? That is my opinion, because otherwise you're just wasting your time and you're just telling yourself more bullshit and getting someone else to either give you advice or approve your bullshit, right?
Right.
But for me, my current therapist was the first time that I had a truly safe relationship to me. Like I have a really safe relationship with my wife, but I was afraid of things with her, you know, like I had fear related to sharing things with her. I had fear related to sharing things with my dad, everything. So, and I didn't have that self-worth, but having a safe relationship with a person that can guide you or help you see yourself, you know, that makes all the difference. And it's huge. And for me, it was like the first time. And that may be what you experienced. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
I can agree with all of that. Like and I don't know, correct me if it's kind of like the Socratic method, right? Where you just ask questions, like through just talk therapy. And that just asking me questions and going deeper, you know, based on whatever my answer is, then you ask another question that takes me a little bit deeper than that. Yeah, I came to really understand a whole lot more about myself and kind of why I operated the way I did, why I acted the way I did, why I struggled with some of the things I struggled with, why I was a narcissistic prick. I mean, you know, I mean, I came to understand some real stuff, you know, and then you got the responsibility to do something with it, right? That's where that ownership. That's where that ownership goes. Now you know better. Now do better.
Right.
But the first part is really the self-realization, a self-awareness of things. And when people don't take the time to dig in to understand the self-awareness, it's easier just to go, you know what, I can't deal with this. And I'm just going to be who I am and to hell with the consequences. But for you were like, I need to dig in. I need to dig in deeper. I need to continue to dig in deeper. And then it gave you the self-realization of where you were at in life. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go back on some of those patterns. I think that's the other thing people need to understand is we're going to continue to repeat the patterns until we are able to see that we did something, recognize it, and then correct it at that moment. So it's continuing to correct yourself in that moment, because you probably still have times that you do things and you're like, oh, there's that thing again.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And that was another kind of aha moment for me. was recognizing patterns
Mm-hmm.
in my life of how ways I always responded to certain scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was predictable
Mm-hmm.
and unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I noticed, seeing those patterns going, okay, this has to get broken. I can't keep doing this. Like I have responded like substance abuse. Like I have ran to substances every time the pain is too much since I was 16 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
And now you're 40 something years old, homeboy. What are you doing?
Right.
Like, stop. I know, easier said than done, right? But but I mean, yeah.
It's easier to numb the pain than to deal with the pain. And that's really, I think, the biggest thing that people need to understand about people that are addicted to drugs or addicted to, needing that drink, or sometimes it's other things. It's addiction. I've seen people get addicted to religion. I've seen people get addicted to food. All of these things that you do to numb, and have some joy in your life because you don't want to deal with this other thing that you need to deal with.
Yeah. Spot on. I know that all too well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing how, it was up until fairly recently where you still had to run to those substances, and I have struggled with that my whole life as well. And and sometimes you elevate, you elevate yourself so much where you're like, oh, I have so many good coping skills now. It'll probably be different. If I start drinking again, I could probably make it through, And so Jenna and I, my wife and I, we recognized a pattern, it was like, okay, over the last 10 years, I'll be sober for a long time. And then we'll kind of look at each other and it'll be like, it would be fun, right? It would be fun for Cate to drink because she's funny when she, but and then all of a sudden, 2 months goes by and it's like, oh yeah, but it's not fun when she's barfing out the side of a car, that's not fun. And all the other bad things that come along with it. Right. But when you have an addictive personality, you have to accept that about yourself and then, figure out ways to redirect it. Right. So it sounds like that's, what you're up to, which is very cool.
Indeed. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
No.
It's really not. And look, I've done 12-step programs and stuff like that. I think there's a place for those, for all that stuff. I really do. I've tried just about everything. I put myself in a rehab in 2010, not court order or anything. I was just a damn drunk and was drunk every day. And, no, it's tough. It's tough, really.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with that pain. No, you talk about numbing the hurt. That's it, right? That's it. At least for me. And I can only speak for but for me, the pain, whatever it is, gets too bad. It's like, I can't anymore. I got to release this pain.
Right.
Learning to push through and be comfortable with that. Just sit with that pain, for me at least.
That's it. I mean, it's figuring out better coping mechanisms in dealing with the pain. And so where it used to be a drink or maybe something else, you're figuring out, okay, well, what can I do when I'm feeling this? And so this was something someone brought up last week, a post that I had done. And I talked to you about this earlier, that sometimes in the moment when we're so upset, if we're thinking about what might happen, we're having anxiety, we're in the future. And then if we're dealing with depression, that's thinking about the past, like all the things that you did wrong. And so we're spending our time in the past. And so if we spend time in the moment, in the now, and saying, what can I do now in this moment to help myself, versus numbing the pain in whatever way, how can I just be present? How can I be in the moment? That's one of the things that I've really seen from you is the meditation aspect of things that you've done. It's continuously bringing yourself into that present, into the now.
Yeah, and I think that's been a game changer for me. And I think it's often misunderstood too. Like, you know, it doesn't mean you don't plan or live and move and work in this world like everybody else does. You have
Right.
to, you know. But it's being able to cut out the noise, both external and internal, you know, and shut it off and just be present. And I always talk about Ohley because I love his work. I really do. His The Power Now and A New Earth. I mean, his books are amazing for me at least. And he said a couple of times, like, some of these old gurus or well-known masters, you know, would often, like, with their students, just go hold up their finger and be like, what is lacking right now? Just drawing your attention into the present moment. What is lacking right now?
In this moment.
Yeah, this very moment, you know, not in the 2 minutes from now, but now. What is lacking right now? I don't know. That coming back to the present or being aware of the present, it has been a real game changer for me. Yeah.
I love that. And so, Matt, when you start to think about the things that the future, so in what Matt does have in store for himself, where do you see things potentially for Matt? Or, you know, you mentioned your mission that you had, but I'm noticing a real sort of, I don't know, for me, a movement in people in the construction industry, especially wanting to look at how it is they treat individuals, humans within that industry. But I think it goes even beyond that. And so I'm just curious where Matt sees himself, you know, in the future, or if you're not worried about that, you're just focused on the present, on the now.
Well, I would say that I'm open to just be used in whatever capacity I can in spreading this message and talking about mental health in the construction industry, and very specifically men's mental health. And it ties into masculinity and thoughts around that. And, you know, I'm pretty verbal, whether that's through writing or, you know, through shooting out a video. And I've taken some time because I've had some personal stuff going on, so I haven't been doing much of that lately, but I plan to return to doing it. And apparently it's resonating and people appreciate it. And that's it. I mean, like, I do this at work. You know, like, I talk to guys daily almost, you know, and it's not like it always becomes some deep conversation, but frequently it does, because if you take that first step and you're willing to open up a little bit about some of your struggles, you'd be amazed what somebody on the other side might do. And then when that happens, well, that's what I mean, I don't know. I've never tried to, like, distill down my message. Like, what am I really trying to say here? You know, I don't know, other than, man, be kind to each other as humans, and especially as, and again, it's just because it's kind of my niche, where especially as men in construction, because we're a bunch of assholes to each other. And I mean, and sometimes that's cool. Like, I want to make sure we say stuff to each other that is meant friendly, and that is not friendly anywhere outside of there. You know what I mean? I mean,
Give me an example.
I don't. Look. I realize we can cuss on this show, but I got to be a little bit. I got to be a little careful here. But we'll call each other names and whatever else, you know. That's meant in jest and fun and camaraderie, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to make the workplace weak.
Too PC.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is a tough industry with tough people in it doing the tough work. Understood. At the same time, we're humans and we're struggling with shit.
Mm-hmm.
And man, how about we talk about that some too?
Right.
How about we get real and talk about that sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the people and again, this goes outside of the construction industry, I'm sure, but the people you work with every day, you see more often than you see your family.
Exactly.
Like you become tight with these people, you know, and some of them you don't like or whatever. But man, find the ones you do like. And how about just open up and have a conversation? See where it might go. You'd be amazed at the shared struggles that we all have that are extremely similar. And somehow talking about them can sometimes give you an opportunity. They can have some insight or a tool or coping skill or whatever that may help you, or vice versa, you know. And sometimes just getting it out, man, just saying it out loud.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but my experience is the moment that I get vulnerable with someone, all of a sudden they feel much more comfortable in getting vulnerable with me. And I think that's part of society, the challenges that we're seeing just in general is that people are unwilling to, I'm an owner of a company, so I can't get vulnerable about the bullshit that I deal with as an owner. I have to stay strong. And it's, the same thing from these other perspectives. I'm a man. I have to be masculine. I have to be these things. I'm XYZ. So it's all these labels, all these things we're putting on us that we feel like we can't get vulnerable with people. I can't open up because of the what if. And so I actually would like to ask you, do you think it takes more strength to get vulnerable? Or do you, because vulnerable is the word, is associated with the word weak.
Right. And so I would disagree that vulnerability is weak. I think it's a risk.
Yeah.
I think it's a risk. You're opening yourself up to hurt, by being vulnerable. But the reward greatly outweighs the risks. And I'm not going to go into all of it, but when we first jumped on here, us three, before we came live, I got pretty fucking real. And that helped me. It helps me to say these things out loud just to another human being and be heard and seen, right? We can do that every day.
Right.
Really. And yes, it's a little frightening to open up. Unless you're just a blabbermouth like me. But it is so, people need it so much. They need it. Really. They don't even know it. They're waiting for that opportunity to be able to talk about the shit that's here and just got them stressed out. They'd love to get that out.
Yeah.
They don't even know it most of the time.
Right. But as soon as they do.
Yeah. How many times? And so you both are big on the vulnerability, and I'm sure talk with people how many times have you seen the floodgates just open on somebody because you facilitated a conversation with them?
Yeah.
and in some way, shape, or form made them feel seen and heard and comfortable and got a little vulnerable, maybe yourself. And man, floodgates. And they're sobbing and telling you about all this horrible stuff going on with them. And like they don't even know where it came from, right? Like at the end of it, they're just like, I don't even know why I did that, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you seen this, right?
A lot.
Yeah. And what does it take? What does it take to get there? Just risking a little bit of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Just being willing to get just being willing to maybe get looked at like you're an idiot. I mean, look at this. I'm bearded construction guy on a live show talking about being vulnerable construction where there is no doubt somebody or somebodies who have been a part of this audience or will see this at some point and be like, that guy's a freaking fruitcake, you know, or whatever.
I disagree, Matt. If anything, I think that the fact that you are the tough looking construction guy and you're giving people permission to be vulnerable is really the message that they should be seeing.
No, fair enough. And I hope that's what resonates. I guess my intention is I'm risking something here.
Yeah.
By and trust me, your old school construction guys, there are going to be some of them be like
vulnerability, right?
That they're like, bro, what happened to Matt? like that dude having a midlife crisis or what? You know? Maybe I don't know.
Maybe it's dated. That's the thing is that when you start to look at things, it's like looking at the alternative. The old Matt that used to be there, was that working for you?
No.
Exactly. So that's ultimately the point, is that the old Matt wasn't working for me. I'm seeking a new Matt.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Well, Matt, any final thoughts that you would give to our audience? Let's say that there are individuals out there that, you know, we have a mixed group, but I will say that we probably have more females than we have males with that really are willing to talk about vulnerability. And part of it is because men have a hard time being vulnerable because they haven't been taught that that's something that's acceptable. So for me, what message would you like to leave to men that are thinking about taking the plunge or thinking about, wow, I really resonate with this person. What can I do to maybe step out of my comfort zone?
I'd say talk to somebody. Man, and that seems maybe oversimplified, but literally start getting it out or journal, write it down. Start writing down what's going on with you and find somebody to talk to. I am literally just a guy trying to figure this stuff out myself. Like, I don't feel like I do not at all claim to have all the answers. But I know what's worked for me, and that's journaling and talk therapy. And like when I started seeing these patterns that were no good for me, I knew I had to break them. Something had to happen, and I didn't know how to do that.
Right.
When life became unmanageable, right? And I didn't know I had to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the construction worker guy coming out with me. Fucking do something. How's that?
I love it.
Start journaling, talk to somebody. Don't just sit there and let this shit fester. Do something.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed.
You know?
Open up that hood and look underneath and see what there is. What's going on? Where are those patterns? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to share some things. You're amazing, Matt. Thank you for showing your vulnerability. You are helping others. Sandra, he is so real. Graham, the strength to expose our vulnerable self with others and trust will be okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, and he also added journaling. If you're unable to talk to someone, at least talk to yourself.
Right.
I love that. And so, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today and getting vulnerable. And I see so many possibilities with where your journey is going to take you. And I just want to give you love and continued strength in being who you are. And I think it's a much needed voice in the world. And so I hope that you continue down this path of giving people permission to redefine themselves in what masculinity is.
Thank you. I'm extremely appreciative for the opportunity, and it was a great conversation. Thank you for facilitating it so well, and for giving me the opportunity to say whatever it is I say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we loved it. I think
Well, thank you.
there are times when you are in the thick of it, which you are right now, where you have all this great knowledge, you have all these things to share, you have some really great skills, but you also have, you know, what feels like a mess still, right? And I don't know if you were experiencing this, but when I have been in that situation, there have been times where I felt like a fraud, where I was like, shit, I'm out there, I'm talking about this shit, I'm telling all sorts of other people to do this, and here I am struggling with this huge thing, right? This huge fucking thing. And the truth is that both can exist. It's dialectical. Both can exist, and they are connected, whether we like it or not. But you know, the messy and the awesome are so connected. So don't let yourself feel like you're a fraud if you are going through that. I just
appreciate that.
It was really hard for me, and sometimes it was just days. It was days when there was just, you know, a big mess that day or whatever. But be kind.
That's extremely helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
do you want to end us today, Cate?
Yes. So thank you so much, Matt, for being here. I want you all, our beautiful, amazing, badass audience, to learn from what Matt has modeled to us today, that it's okay to be real, it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay that we have tons of mistakes that we made in the past. Let that vulnerability and that ability to love yourself kind of guide you, you know, into some more badassery. So when you love yourself, you're limitless. And I want that for all of you this Friday and this weekend, and, you know, make it a real thing for yourself next week as well.
Love it. Thank you again, Matt, for joining us. And thanks to our audience for joining us, and also to those new individuals that came. I hope you come back. But I really appreciate you supporting Matt today. And so thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.